What's going on, everyone? It's JJ Zachariason here for the weekly Q&A, as we do each week. It is a Sunday. It's week one of the NFL season. Very exciting stuff. We have some news with Miles Sanders, first and foremost. He's not going to be playing today. So Boston Scott, get him in your lineup if you have him. And I also should say we are streaming everywhere. So I see the lovely people on Facebook. If you are asking questions on Facebook, please check out our YouTube channel. Just search for FanDuel YouTube. I am live there, and I'm taking questions actually from the YouTube channel this season. So definitely head on over there. I'm going to get going right away. We have some questions on YouTube already. The first one's from Matthew Zachary, Hunt or Edelman at flex and half PPR. You know, I think this is pretty close. I'd probably go with Edelman, but I think that this is a fair one, very close. Don't love Hunt's matchup against Baltimore. Edelman apparently has had some issues with Cam Newton and just kind of getting on the same page as him, but I'd still lean Edelman because New England has a pretty high individual team total this week. Next one, pick 2 for running back PPR, Taylor, Singletary, Akers, or Scott. I would lock in Scott there in a PPR league. I think Boston Scott's a top 20 guy this week. And then I'd also probably go with Jonathan Taylor in what should be a nice positive game script for Indianapolis. I think Jonathan Taylor is a good play over on FanDuel as well at $5,400. Someone said David Montgomery or Kareem Hunt in the flex. Now that we know that David Montgomery is a full go, I have to start Anthony Miller as well. Do I double dip with this Bears offense? I don't mind it per se. I think that they're sort of in the same level and sort of in the same tier. I'd probably lean David Montgomery over Hunt this week because there's a lot of question marks in Cleveland in general. We don't know what this offense is really going to look like with Kevin Stefanski. I think we have a general idea, but we don't know exactly how that backfield split's going to look like. We don't know how much volume out of the backfield Kareem Hunt could see. I don't mind going David Montgomery. I'm not really in love with either of those players this week, though. James Robinson or Tariq Cohen in half PPR. I think this is another close one. Cohen probably has the better floor because here's my general feel for James Robinson. Anyone who follows my work knows that I've been on Robinson even before the draft. But my general feel for Robinson is that if a negative game script hits, and when a negative game script hits, which is fairly likely in this game against Indianapolis as pretty big underdogs, we're going to see a lot of Chris Thompson as the primary pass catching back in the backfield. I don't mind James Robinson, though, for what he could potentially do in the first half. I'd probably lean him over Tariq Cohen, but that one's pretty close as well. Boston Scott or Kenyon Drake in half-point PPR. I would go with Kenyon Drake over Boston Scott. He still has top 5 upside this season. Kenyon Drake does. I know the matchup isn't great, but I would still go with Drake. You know, the other thing with Boston Scott is they've liked Corey Clement in that backfield throughout August. I mean, they didn't do anything despite this Miles Sanders injury. They didn't do anything significant to add to that backfield. So they're clearly into Corey Clement in some way. I'm afraid that Clement could end up seeing some goal line work as the bigger bodied guy between him and Boston Scott. I love Boston Scott, especially in PPR formats. Don't get me wrong, but I do think that there is some downside there. Then there's also downside that the Eagles are down 2 offensive linemen. They're facing a good defensive line in Washington. I don't think it's going to be so clean for this Philadelphia offense against Washington today. Bryan Edwards or Deontay Johnson. This is tough. I actually have the exact same decision because I have a lot of both of these guys this year. I'm going Deontay Johnson over Bryan Edwards, but I love Bryan Edwards in DFS on this main slate at a min price of $4,500 over on FanDuel. AJ Green or Deontay Thompson. I'm assuming that's Deontay Johnson. Look, AJ Green, not in the best spot in the world in terms of a cornerback matchup, obviously coming off that injury. I think I would go Deontay Johnson. The Steelers are facing a Giants secondary that's very, very beatable. T.Y. Hilton or Marvin Jones. I'd lean T.Y. I like Marvin Jones a lot without Kenny Golladay there. Don't get me wrong. I would still try to find a way to get Marvin Jones in my lineup, but T.Y. Hilton is in a great spot against a very beatable defense. 10-team PPR, drop Chris Thompson or Ronald Jones to pick up Boston Scott. I would drop probably either of them at this point, but I would lean dropping Chris Thompson over Ronald Jones just because Jones does have the upside to potentially take over that backfield even with Leonard Fournette there. But I like Boston Scott over both of those guys easily this week. Which 2 should I start this week? James Robinson, Jalen Reagor, Antonio Gibson, or Cam Akers for flex half PPR? I would probably go with Gibson and Cam Akers, the 2 rookies there. I guess all of these guys are rookies. But Gibson, Lots of upside in that backfield without a lot of alternatives. I do think that they're going to split it, give Peyton Barber some early down work. J.D. McKissick will catch some balls out of the backfield too. But Gibson, if you combine his athleticism with this potential and how they're going to use him in that Washington offense, like him a lot. Cam Akers, I wouldn't be shocked if Malcolm Brown sees a lot of work in this game against Dallas. But I would still go with Cam Akers. I think he's a solid bet. Let's see. Need 2 running back in a full PPR from Robinson, Clement, and Dobbins. I would probably go with Robinson and Dobbins. We don't know what Corey Clement's workload is really going to look like. And like I said, I don't love that offensive line to defensive line matchup. Full PPR, A.J. Brown or DJ Chark. I mean, the fact that this is a question for you means that your team is pretty stacked. I really like DJ Chark today and what could be a negative game script or end up being a negative game script. Just really tough to bench A.J. Brown. I guess I would lean Chark, but it's very, very close. Hunter Henry or Tyler Higbee in standard. Would probably lean Tyler Higbee because we don't know exactly what this offense is going to look like for the Chargers. Hang on, I lost my spot where I was. Going back. All right, here we go. I would go with Tyler Higbee over Hunter Henry. Stafford or Goff, I would go with Goff. Noah Fant or Dallas Goddard, I would go with Noah Fant. Pick 2, Gibson, Djax, Montgomery. I would go with Gibson and Djax just because Montgomery's coming off that injury, and this is a full PPR league. Zach Moss, CeeDee Lamb, Christian Kirk, James Robinson for 1 half PPR flex. I would go Zach Moss over James Robinson. Those are the 2 that I think you would be leaning towards right now because we don't know what this CeeDee Lamb workload is going to look like. Christian Kirk in a tough spot where he didn't play well against San Francisco last year. I would lean Zach Moss over James Robinson, but I do think it's close. I have both of those guys in a lot of different spots. I'm playing more Zach Moss, but there is one league just to hedge a little bit where I'm playing James Robinson over Zach Moss, so it is very close. Cam or Josh Allen, weather scaring you in Buffalo? Yeah, I mean, look, I think that you can still go with Josh Allen here just because we don't know what Cam is exactly going to look like. We don't know what kind of rapport he has with these wide receivers, and Josh Allen is facing arguably the worst secondary in football. Drop Brandon Cooks for Deshaun Jackson. Sure. I mean, I don't know if I would. I mean, if you need to play someone right now, yes, do it because Deshaun Jackson over the first 3 weeks of the season has a very, very easy schedule. Would I just straight up drop Brandon Cooks because of what he did in week 1 against Kansas City, a team that actually plays pretty well against wide receivers? I don't know if I'd go that far. I would try to get both of them on my team, though. Someone said, hey, JJ, what's going on, Ethan? Pick 2 PPR, T.Y., Amari, A-Rob. I would go with T.Y. and A-Rob because we don't know what the status is totally with Amari Cooper right now. Plus, he doesn't have the easiest matchup in the world. James Robinson or Fournette in PPR? I think you go with James Robinson. How awesome is that? Fournette leaving Jacksonville, the undrafted guy coming in, taking Fournette's spot, and we're going with James Robinson over him. Chris Herndon or Dallas Goddard? I like them both low-key today, but I would go with Herndon. Half PPR, Marlon Mack or Boston Scott? That's a tough one. I think that I would lean Boston Scott, but I think Marlon Mack is a sneaky good play today. Going to sip some tea real quick. Boston Scott, Hollywood Brown, or Gallup in standard. I would go Hollywood Brown there, but I think Scott's still in play. I mean, all 3 of them are pretty good plays. Marvin Jones over Deontay Johnson. I think I would this week, yeah, because he should be seeing a lot of volume in that offense. Singletary or Akers, I would go with Akers. I'm not really trusting Singletary just yet. I mean, it's close. They're both going to be in a split backfield. I worry about Singletary's touchdown equity because I think Zach Moss and Josh Allen are both 1-2 in that offense to see work close to the goal line. Hey JJ, love the podcast. Thanks. Half PPR, Devontae Parker, Anthony Miller, Antonio Gibson, or Jerry Jeudy. I like Jeudy this week, but I would probably go with Antonio Gibson there. Cam or Kyler, I would still go with Kyler. Look, Kyler Murray played pretty well against San Francisco last year. I do worry a little bit, though, about what's going on over there. I mean, not just for football reasons, obviously, but for football reasons. I worry about what the air quality could do to that game. Start, sit, Hunt, Cohen, or James Robinson. I think I would probably go with James Robinson, but I think that they're all sort of in the same tier. What up, JJ? Love the podcast. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Hey, JJ, Moss or Hunt in PPR? I might lean Moss. I just like the positive game script potential. I think Moss could have like an 18-carry, 60-yard, maybe a couple touchdown game if they're able to see that positive game script. Full PPR, pick 3, Mostert, McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Boston Scott. Those are all amazing, amazing options. I would definitely play McLaurin. And then I think I would go with the 2 running backs because Mostert is in a pretty decent spot where Tevin Coleman might not play because of the air quality stuff and his sickle cell trait. I believe it's the sickle cell trait. So I think I would go with Mostert and Boston Scott over Deontay Johnson. Marvin Jones or DK Metcalf in PPR. I would lean Metcalf in what should be a higher scoring game. Austin Hooper or Blake Jarwin in a PPR league. I would probably go with Blake Jarwin. Again, I'm just kind of iffy on this Cleveland offense against Baltimore. Tough matchup. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like there. I would just go with Jarwin. Let's see, Gallup or Boston Scott. I would go with Boston Scott. Big Ben or Carson Wentz. I'd probably go with Carson Wentz, but I like Roethlisberger this week. Let's see, Chris Thompson or Cam Akers in PPR. I would go with Cam Akers, but I think there's a case to be made for Chris Thompson there. Terry McLaurin or Amari Cooper. I think I would go with Terry McLaurin. Half PPR, Boston Scott or Deontay Johnson. I'd go with Boston Scott. PPR super flex. Love it. I love I guess it is a PPR question because Sterling Shepard's in this. Carr, Burrow, Sterling Shepard. I'd be going with the quarterbacks. I actually have in a Superflex Dynasty League, Carr versus Burrow. I'm going with Derek Carr. I love Derek Carr today against this really bad and young and inexperienced Carolina defense. If you want to stack Derek Carr with Henry Ruggs or Brian Edwards over on FanDuel, I'm all for it. Jerry Jeudy or Deontay Johnson, I'd go Deontay. Hollywood or Djax, very, very close for me. I'd probably go with Hollywood, but I do think that's very close. A hobbled Mike Evans or Manny Sanders. I mean, because Manny Sanders isn't the best option in the world, I think I might still go with Mike Evans. But yeah, I mean, if you have Mike Evans, guys, I would be playing a lot of players over Mike Evans today because of the injury. Hey, JJ, love the stream. Thanks. Full PPR, James White or Jonathan Taylor. I might go with Jonathan Taylor there. I do think James White is the higher floor, though. Calvin Ridley or Robert Woods, both really good plays this week. Again, this is another floor ceiling thing. I think Calvin Ridley has the ceiling. Robert Woods has the floor. Michael Gallup or Jonathan Taylor or CeeDee Lamb in full PPR. I'd probably go with Gallup and then Taylor and then Lamb because it's full PPR, but I think you can make the case that Jonathan Taylor has the most upside there. Should I start T.Y. Hilton or Amari Cooper? I think it's fine if you want to go with T.Y. Hilton. Hawkinson or Goddard if it means dropping Hawkinson. Don't drop Hawkinson. Hawkinson's in a great spot today. No Kenny Galladay. Should be a beatable enough defense in Chicago. But he should see a lot of work, not only in terms of target share, which is great, but also some work in the end zone. I mean, Kenny Galladay sees a lot of end zone targets. Those could go to Hawkinson. I love TJ Hawkinson today. How would you rank the following rookie running backs, Gibson, Akers, or Moss? I would probably say if it's a PPR, I'm going to assume it's a PPR league. So I'll go Gibson, Moss, Akers. But I could go Akers. I mean, I could go in any direction there. Antonio Gibson or Boston Scott in half PPR. I like Boston Scott a little bit more. Mostert or Le'Veon. I would go with Mostert over Le'Veon. Breeze or Wilson at quarterback. I'd lean Russell Wilson, but I think it's pretty close. Boston Scott or Hollywood Brown, half PPR. I would go with Scott for a floor, Hollywood for a ceiling, if that's helpful. Flex position, Robbie Anderson, Emmanuel Sanders, Marlon Mack. I'd go Marlon Mack there. Which rookie are you trusting out of the gate, Ruggs or Reagor? I would go with Ruggs over Reagor because Reagor has had that shoulder injury. We don't know what his usage is going to look like exactly. Christian Kirk or Deshawn Jackson? I'd go with Deshawn Jackson. Again, Christian Kirk has not played well or didn't last year against the San Francisco defense. And, of course, it's a good San Francisco defense, too. Jimmy G or Matthew Stafford? I think it's close. I'd probably go with Stafford given all the uncertainty with that Cardinals 49ers game. Zach Moss over Hunt in standard. Sure, I think that Moss has just as much touchdown upside as Kareem Hunt does, and Hunt is more of a PPR asset than one in a standard league. Cooper Kupp or Calvin Ridley. I think Kupp is a little bit safer in what should be a really high-scoring game. But I don't mind Ridley. I try to get both of them in my lineup, honestly. Mike Gesicki or Austin Hooper in a half PPR league. I'd probably lean Gesicki. Superflex league, can you help pick two? Tannehill, Burrow, Tyrod, or Minshew. I would probably go with Tyrod and Tannehill there. Again, I love Joe Burrow. I'm really excited about what Joe Burrow is going to be able to do this year. But against this Chargers defense, they're banged up a little bit. I get it. But I still am going to just wait and see how he does and how he looks in week one. AJ Brown or Gibson in full PPR flex, leaning Brown. Yeah, I think I would lean Brown too. Hi, JJ. Greetings from Brazil. Hello. If you had to pick two, who would you go with? Swift, Robinson, or Cohen? I'm assuming that's James Robinson and not Allen Robinson. If that's the case, I would probably go with Robinson and maybe Cohen. I just don't know what Swift's workload is going to look like. He's coming off that leg injury. He was actually a sit on my podcast this week, but he's coming off that leg injury, and they're going to utilize Adrian Peterson, it sounds like, and obviously Kerryon Johnson is still there. Not the best matchup in the world. I just don't love DeAndre Swift today. Raheem Mostert or Le'Veon Bell? Already answered that one. I'm going Raheem Mostert. Moss or Hunt? I've answered that one. I would go with Moss. Reagor or Landry in the flex? Both of them could be on snap counts. So I would probably lean Landry. But it's up in the air because it depends on how their teams want to use them. Kerryon or Ronald Jones? I'd probably go with Ronald Jones. Don't love either of them this week though. Which rookie are you trusting out of I already answered that one. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Breeze or Wilson at quarterback? I already answered that one too. Sorry guys, if I'm not getting to your question right away, don't ask it a second time because I will get to it. I promise. Today I learned JJ is unprepared for Christian Kirk season. I love Christian Kirk, man. I love me some Christian Kirk. I just don't love this matchup. That's it. Crowder, Deontay Johnson, Miller need 2.5 point. I think I would go with Deontay. I'm a little worried about Jamison Crowder. I don't love the matchup, but he should see a lot of volume. I think he's safer than Anthony Miller, but I am into Anthony Miller today, so I might go with Miller over Crowder. Full PPR, pick 2 of 3, Mostert, Jonathan Taylor, or Melvin Gordon. I would probably go with Mostert and Gordon, but I think that you can make a case for Taylor over Gordon. Clearly, I'm pretty high on Raheem Mostert today. Tariq Cohen or Kareem Hunt in PPR. I think that I would go with Hunt, but again, same tier. Don't really have a strong preference. Love the stream. Hollywood or Marvin Jones in standard. I'd probably go with Hollywood. A lot of touchdown potential today for him. Boston Scott or David Montgomery, also Amari Cooper or John Brown. I'd go with Boston Scott over David Montgomery. I'd go with Amari Cooper over John Brown. Tannehill or Bridgewater. I like Teddy as a streamer, but I think I'd still go with Tannehill this week. A lot of question marks. Look, I'm playing it safe for the most part here in week 1. No preseason. Teddy Bridgewater's on a new team, new offense. We don't know exactly what it's going to look like. Tannehill's a fairly safe option, especially with the injuries to that Denver defense. Cohen or Moss in PPR. I'd probably go with Moss. Pretty close, though. James White or Sterling Shepard. I think Shepard could actually have a decent game, but the matchup is still kind of tough. I'd probably go with James White. Love the podcast. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, JJ, Moss or Hunt. I think I already answered that one. Austin Hooper or Blake Jarwin. I think I answered that one too, but I would probably lean Jarwin. Marquis Brown or Allen Robinson. I'd go with Allen Robinson, but I love me some Hollywood today. Boston Scott or Marlon Mack with Lane Johnson out. Look, I get it. I understand the concern. This is a standard league, so I actually think that you can go with Marlon Mack here because it's a standard league, because we don't know what Boston Scott's touchdown equity is going to look like, if they're going to use Corey Clement there, how they're going to use how they're going to utilize those running backs. I think Boston Scott's way better in PPR formats, but I like Marlon Mack a lot today. Marvin Jones versus Tyler Boyd in full point PPR. I'd probably lean Marvin Jones, but I like Tyler Boyd. T.Y. Hilton or Marvin Jones. I'd go T.Y. Hilton. James White or Jamison Crowder, half PPR. I think White's a little bit safer. Probably go with him. Goddard or Hurst. I would go with Hayden Hurst. Crowder, Deontay, I already answered that one. Gesicki or Chris Herndon. I would probably go with Gesicki, even though I think Herndon could easily outscore him today. Metcalf or Amari. Look, I'm worried about the matchup, worried about him being banged up. I'd probably go with Metcalf there. Austin Hooper or Blake Jarwin, just answered that one. T.Y. Hilton or Marvin Jones for the flex and half point. Go T.Y. Hilton. I think I answered that one too. Air horn. Pick one. Crowder, Kirk, or Jalen Reagor. I might go with Crowder there. I think Kirk is close. I can't get behind Reagor given he hasn't played, or he's been banged up. Cam Newton or Carson Wentz. Love the show. I like Cam Newton a little bit more than Carson Wentz this week, and the main reason is because of the offensive line injuries for Philadelphia, going up against a good defensive line in Washington. I still like Carson Wentz a lot. Don't get me wrong. They have a banged up secondary too, and Cam Newton is still a little bit riskier. I'm really trusting what the lines are saying in terms of the Patriots scoring a lot of points today. So if they're going to score 23, 24, 25 plus points, Cam Newton's going to have a lot to do with that. Drop Brandon Cooks for Deshawn Jackson rest of season. I don't know. I talked about that one earlier. I don't know if I would do that right now, but I would try to find a way to get Deshawn Jackson on my team. If it has to be Brandon Cooks and you need Deshawn Jackson today, sure. But I think that they have similar outlooks rest of the season. Gibson or Cohen in PPR, I think I'd go with Gibson. Amari Cooper or Mark Ingram, PPR at flex. Look, Mark Ingram's fine. I don't know what J.K. Dobbins is going to look like in that backfield with him and what the workload's going to look like. It's a PPR league. Even though the injury's there and the matchup is tough, I would probably go with Amari. Even though Ingram has a lot of upside and touchdown potential. Start 2, Evans, Hollywood, Boyd, Djax. I'd probably go with Hollywood and Djax. Evans banged up. Boyd doesn't have as much upside as Djax and Hollywood do. So I'd go with those two. Let's see. Regular or Djax, I'd go Djax. Full PPR, flex, Calvin Ridley, Boston Scott, Hollywood Brown, or A.J. Brown, pick 2. That's very tough. Boston Scott's probably got the highest floor of this group, and then I would probably go with Hollywood, but I mean, I can make a case for any of those 4 guys, so sorry I'm not that much of a help. Pick 2 in PPR, Paris Campbell, Laviska Shenault, James Robinson, and Brandon Ayuk. I think I'd go James Robinson for the floor there because we don't know what these other guys are, how they're going to be used. And then I might go with Paris Campbell. I love Laviska Shenault. I hope he shows up here in week 1 because I have him on a lot of rosters, but I'm kind of waiting and seeing. Marvin Jones or Mark Andrews. I think Mark Andrews can go nuts today, guys. If you have Mark Andrews, he should be in your lineup, even if he's a flex play. Boston Scott or Michael Gallup, PPR. I would probably go with Scott for floor. Rojo or Akers in half PPR. I would go with Akers over Rojo, I think. Should I get rid of Hayden Hurst and get Jonnu Smith this week? No, I like Hayden Hurst a lot. Full PPR flex, Calvin Ridley, Boston Scott, Hollywood Brown, A.J. Brown. I already talked about that one. Ambiguous backfield to take a shot at today. Indianapolis would be one. Newton, Ryan, or Roethlisberger. I'd probably go with Newton. I don't mind Matt Ryan, but that Seattle secondary is a little bit better with the Jamal Adams addition. And Roethlisberger, we don't know exactly what things are going to look like for him. Should the rookie Jonathan Taylor be started today? It depends who you'd be starting him over. Ingram, Jonathan Taylor, or Tariq in full PPR. I'd probably go with Ingram there. Marlon Mack or Cam Akers. Hashtag smoothies for two years straight. Yes, team smoothie. I would go with Marlon Mack over Cam Akers. Lost Miles Sanders. Would you start Singletary or Moss or sit one for CD Lamb in PPR? Look, I like Moss more than Singletary. I'm going to go Moss over Singletary, but obviously can go in either direction. We don't know how that backfield is going to be split exactly. Akers, Montgomery, or Gibson. I would go with Gibson there, especially if it's a PPR league. Thank you for the only podcast worth hearing. Thank you, Matt. That's high praise. Djax versus Boston Scott, full PPR. Djax has the ceiling, man. Boston Scott has the floor because he's probably going to see 15 plus touches. So it depends what you need in your lineup. Pick 2 PPR, Djax, Edelman, Gallup. I would go with Djax and Gallup probably. Ruggs or Renfro in half PPR. I would go with Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs and Brian Edwards could go bonkers today, guys. Let's see. Auden Tate, Miles Boykin, Corey Clement. Those are not the best options in the world. Miles Boykin actually has a decent cornerback matchup. I might just throw a dart with him. Should I be worried about Rams game being postponed tonight? I have Woods starting, OBJ on the bench. It doesn't sound like it's going to, but even if it does, I would assume that they just kind of shift things around. Plus, it's indoors, right? So I don't know if that's going to make a difference at all. But if OBJ is on your bench, I think that you can just play OBJ over Robert Woods. Pick 1 PPR, A.J. Brown, Marvin Jones, DJ Chark. I think I'm going Chark there, but I could go with any of those guys. Let's see. Full PPR, Antonio Gibson or Anthony Miller. I think I'd go with Antonio Gibson. But again, it's close because I really like Anthony Miller this week. Amari or Djax in half PPR. I think I'd go with Djax. I really like Djax today. Who should I start for wide receiver 2, OBJ or Juju? Juju could go nuts this week against a really bad defense in secondary. So I would probably go with Juju over OBJ. Kirk Cousins or Ryan Fitzpatrick? I would go with Kirk Cousins. Why did Ertz block you on Twitter? I have no idea, but there's two two athletes, two NFL players that blocked me on Twitter. One of them being Zach Ertz, no idea why. One of them being Mark Ingram, no idea why. Start McLaurin over Lockett for higher ceiling. If you want to, that's fine, but I'd find a way to get both of them in my lineup. Boston Scott, Antonio Gibson, Deontay Johnson. I think I'd go Boston Scott. PPR, Odell, Tyler Boyd, or McLaurin for Washington. I would go with probably McLaurin. Should I start Big Ben over Josh Allen? I wouldn't. I still like Josh Allen. I know there's some weather concerns, but I would still lean his way. Noah Fant or Dallas Goddard, I'd go Noah Fant. Gibson or Moss in half PPR for the rest of the season, have to drop one. I would drop Moss over Gibson, but I would try to keep both of them on my roster for sure. In PPR, start two, Rojo, James Robinson, or Zach Moss. I would start Robinson and Moss, I think. Moss or Taylor in half PPR. I like Taylor more than Moss. Wentz or Cam. I like Cam a little bit more, but I like them both this week. Start Marvin Jones Jr. or David Montgomery. If it's a PPR league, I'd go with Marvin Jones. I think I'd go with Marvin Jones regardless. Hey, just a reminder, guys, all of you over on Facebook or other platforms that aren't YouTube, I'm answering these questions on YouTube, and I will be moving forward on these Sunday shows. So we're still streaming if you guys want to listen and watch, but head on over to YouTube to get the full experience, to be able to ask questions that I'll be able to answer. PPR, Mostert or Boston Scott? I think I'd go with Raheem Mostert because of the Tevin Coleman news that he might not play today. Robbie Anderson or Reagor, Lazard, or Slayton. I mean, all of them are pretty much dart throws. I think Robbie Anderson has the best matchup, so I would go with him. I mean, Reagor technically does, but I don't really love the him coming off the injury thing. Is Kerryon Johnson startable as a flex in PPR? Yeah, in like a 22-person league. So likely not. I can't trust that backfield. Marlon Mack or T.Y. Hilton in standard. I would probably go with Hilton over Mack, but I like them both a lot today. Let's see. Josh Kelly, Greg Ward, or Justin Jefferson, full PPR. How deep are your leagues, guys? Unless this is a dynasty league. I guess I'd go with Joshua Kelly and hope that he sees some goal line work. Let's see. Boston Scott, OBJ, Robert Woods, A.J. Brown, Marquis Brown, pick 3. I guess I'd bench A.J. and Bobby Woods, but those are all good options. Pick 1, Leonard Fournette, Corey Clement, or James Robinson. I think I'm going James Robinson there. Jarvis Landry or Jerry Jeudy in half PPR. I get it. I think that it's fine if you want to go Jeudy there if you're a little bit worried about Jarvis Landry being on a snap count. That's totally fine. If you don't want to risk it, I'm giving you my blessing. Diggs or Lockett. I like Lockett more. Pick 2, half PPR, Moss, White, James Robinson, Montgomery, Boston Scott. I'd go Boston Scott and probably James White for safety. But if you want more of a ceiling and touchdown upside to pair with Boston Scott, I'd go with Zach Moss. Robert Woods or Devontae Parker in flex PPR. Look, I know Devontae Parker did some work against Stephon Gilmore the last time those guys played, but I'm still going with Robert Woods here. Keenan Allen, Hayden Hurst, Devontae Parker, and PPR. I'd go with Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen could actually have a decent day. Keenan Allen or David Montgomery. I would go with Keenan Allen. A.J. Brown, Hollywood, Gallup, Djax, full PPR. I mean, all of them are in the same tier for me, but if you want ceiling, if you want the big playability, obviously go Hollywood and Djax. I think Gallup is in a really, really good spot. Probably find a way to get him in there. And then I mean, both Hollywood and Djax are kind of the same for me this week. So I would probably go with one of those guys to get a little bit of big play upside. Gibson, Moss, Scott, full PPR, pick 1. I think I'd go Scott over those other two, but I like all 3 this week. Scott, Gibson, or Mack. I would probably go with Scott in a PPR format. Allen or Brady. I would go with Josh Allen. Ebron or Jarwin. Ebron's in a decent spot this week. I just worry about usage. I don't know exactly how he's going to be using that offense. So I'm going to go with Blake Jarwin. We have 1 minute left, guys, and then I got to head out. Let's see. Daniel Jones or Teddy Bridgewater. I'd go with Teddy Bridgewater. I can't trust Daniel Jones against the Steelers. Devin Singletary or David Montgomery in PPR. I'd go with Devin Singletary. Higbee or Hurst in PPR. Kind of the same for me. Don't have a strong preference. I think Higbee's a little bit safer, though. Full PPR, Rojo, Breida, Lindsey, McKinnon, pick 1. I don't mind Matt Breida totally because you can gash the New England on through the run game, and then Breida is going to be the pass catching back in that backfield. So I would lean Breida of those 3. We got one more. This is from Ian. Adam Thielen or A.J. Brown, full PPR. I'm going to lean Adam Thielen. I think Adam Thielen is a great value, too, over on FanDuel at $6,800. But that's going to do it for me, guys. I appreciate all the questions and all the interaction over on YouTube. I know that we switched things up on you this year, but definitely subscribe to the YouTube channel. Just search for FanDuel YouTube. I will be here every single Sunday at noon Eastern, and then we have shows throughout the week on Tuesdays and Fridays, and then we have some DFS shows that aren't football related as well. So definitely subscribe. Good luck this week, everyone. Follow me on Twitter at LateRoundQB. I'll try to answer some more questions there. Good luck, though. Enjoy week 1. Football is finally back.